What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Other Side of the Firewall podcast, where we talk about the latest and greatest in cybersecurity news, as well as we highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. My name is Ryan Williams, and as always, I'm joined by Shannon.
What's up? What's up?
What's going on? And special guest for the week, Michael Ware. How are you doing?
Greetings and salutations.
So Michael Ware is a return guest to the show. So before we had him in an interview capacity, so please tune in. I believe it is the May 4th, 2022 episode with Michael Ware, but he'll be on for the entire week. So we have two topics, a really good discussion with Mike, and then Friday's episodes, everything else. So non-cyber related games, movies, books, all that good stuff. So definitely tune in for all that. Without further ado, I'll give it to Shannon.
All right, everybody. So, excuse me. This article comes from fedscoop.com, written by John Hewitt Jones, and it's debt ceiling agreement seeks to claw back IT funds from GSA and CISA. So, as you guys are hearing this, like this has come to fruition. Like it is as good as gold right now, right? Like it's already been signed. But the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, in its current form, would also rescind some unobligated funds made available to the Justice Department CIO. So money that was already obligated. So we've talked about this before in the past, right? About cybersecurity and things of that nature being more IT related things being taken more seriously. And it looks like some of that's going to get clawed back, right? Like, let me not say some of the laws and the executive orders that have been put out there, they're still going to happen, right? But like the money that was gone towards them, some of that is getting clawed back, right? So this all came about with the debt ceiling agreement, right? Like the debt ceiling, yes, that was something that needed to be addressed, but it was $650 million that was allocated to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, right? CISA, through the American Rescue Plan that they're trying to claw back from. So I don't like to see this, right? So every time we have it to where we see, cybersecurity and IT getting taken more seriously, I'm like, yes, I love it. To see the money come back, I don't like that. We're going backwards now, right? Like this is not what I'm looking forward to. And again, like this is one of those things where it seemed like low-hanging fruit for them to be able to take some money from, right? Like not to get into the politics of it, right? But I mean, you have one group that's like, hey, we want to do this with the debt ceiling. We have one group that says, hey, I want to do this. And this was the compromise they came up with, right? Was to pull back money that's been unobligated, right? So even though it was allocated, like if they weren't quick and fast on getting it put forward to something and it's sitting out there, like if there was plans for it, and this is kind of how it works with IT, right? Like you can't just say, oh, I know I'm going to do this, that, and the third, right? Especially when it comes to implementation in the government, you got to plan these things out. So you will have money that is just sitting there like, okay, we know we have these funds that have been obligated to us, but what are we going to do for it? Let's make a plan so we know how much it'll be and submit up and do whatever, right? Well, if you weren't fast enough, that money is going away. It's going to be taken back. So sad to see, especially in this day and age, right? Like going through COVID, like it just proved that we needed to be more serious when it came to cybersecurity and IT and defense, of networks and things of that nature. Like we saw a lot of things come out of that to where it's like, man, I didn't even know that was something that we could do, right? Like what do we used to always say? It was the idle hands of the work of the devil, right? Like that's what happened. People were sitting at home, not going into work, and they were like, what can I do here? People that may not have necessarily been bad before, all of a sudden they turned, right? But I'm guessing at that. I'm not saying that for sure. I'm guessing at that, but no, like this is not the direction I think we should have gone with this. Like politics aside, I mean, I could see the money coming from other places, like, and me being a military retiree, I hate to say this, and I hope nobody doesn't follow us for this, but there has been some wasteful spending I've seen in my career to where it's like we could do better with allocating that.
I needed both those TVs and chairs.
Yeah. There it is. That's exactly what happens, right? The unfunded request comes down, and but I don't think this is where we should have taken from. But this is just my opinion. But Mike, what's your thoughts on this?
So a lot to unpack. I'm going to go backwards from your topic there. So being on some of the other sides of this in the military, at the end of the year, you have money. And to your point, Shannon, if you want to spend money, you have to figure out what contract vehicle you have available, because they could say, okay, here's $1 million or here's $650 million. You're like, okay, if I'm going to spend that on contractors, that's not going to be spent all at once. Maybe I can obligate it, but that money is still going to slowly go out month to month as as it's paid. Then you have to figure out how long it takes to get a contract. And if you have to go out for bid, the size of the contract, that's 18, 24, 48 months, depending on the size, and so if you're looking, it takes a long time to spend money. But if at the end of the year you need to spend money, you know what you can buy quickly? Chairs and TVs. So this is what happens. You don't spend the money, you lose your budget the next year. So you're like, what can I buy this week? Chairs and TVs. But so seriously though, this is upsetting because you're saying politics aside. One is cybersecurity being the easy target. It's like, well, we'll just take money from here. And it seems that not in the private and the public sectors, it's like it's I don't know if it's in the private sector, it's not generating cash, right? So you're not generating revenue. So it's like, well, this is we can go after there. But it is frustrating because when these kind of things happen with the budgets, I dealt with this in the military, I also deal with this in the state, is there was work. So we got a whole bunch of work that we had to do for this debt ceiling deal because they're like, well, what happens if this doesn't go through? And we have to go through a bunch of what if scenarios. A bunch of people who are fairly high in the organization have to stop what they're doing and look at this. That's very frustrating because, I know the politics are the politics, but it hurts everybody. It takes time away. It takes opportunity costs. And then you're looking at it as like, at the end of the day, it's going to be security they're going to take after. And so, a couple of weeks ago, I gave this keynote speech for our internal and Microsoft 365 thing. And one of the things I was talking about in that is we're moving a lot of things to the cloud. And when we go into Microsoft's cloud, those upgrades are going to happen. I can't stop it. This is good. I'm happy about this because it's not a choice. Before there would be a choice between operations and security. But by being in the Microsoft cloud, I don't have that choice. Microsoft's going to upgrade. We're going to have to go with that upgrade. And it takes that choice away. And why I bring that up is it's this. There was a choice and cybersecurity lost, and that's disappointing.
Yeah,
Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think you bring up multiple good points, both you and Shannon. Because I remember not too long ago, right? Because I just retired in April, so maybe 6 or 7 months ago, I was involved in the spend plan, right? You have to obligate that money to make sure you don't lose it. So I would not be surprised, or actually, I guess it would depend. I'm not sure if the numbers are going to come out, how much they saved. You would think that would be something that would be toted by one of the parties later on, right? Like by doing this, we saved X amount of dollars. How much will be saved? I think you bring up a good point. I'm thinking short term, right? This year they've already obligated what they need to obligate, and they're working on those short term projects, and they have those long tail projects coming up. But I think you bring up a really good point that something that was 18 to 24, maybe even 48 months, that might be scrapped now, right? Like they may have had the pieces going, and now all of a sudden it's like we won't have the budget, and we may not have the budget for the foreseeable future. So whatever this magical project was that was going to help protect critical infrastructure or provide better training to our employees is gone now. So we won't necessarily see the ramifications now. Like in the next year, they're going to tote like, oh, we cut wasteful spending, we were fiscally responsible, yada yada yada. And then 4 years from now, when they start to see the gaps, that's when they do things they don't want to talk about. Like, oh, why are you not trained to, this degree? How come we didn't see this threat? Well, we were building a SIM, or we were procuring, products to help with this. We're getting vendors on board, and you cut that. But it's not going to be something to talk about because what are you doing for me lately is more of the topic than, hey, what does the future look like for cybersecurity? So. We've had maybe 5 or 6 different topics about the critical infrastructure plans that were coming out and talking about the money and being super excited. There were jobs that were coming into the pipe. We're like, oh man, they're going to be able to fill X amount of positions. But a lot of that now is going to be in jeopardy. So like Shannon said, I hate to see it. Excuse me.
And the thing is, like, if it is something that when you're talking about the shortfalls, you know, for something that's 48 months away, right? 4 years from now, I'm not gonna say they're not gonna want to talk about it, but think of the security we're doing now. Now think about how it's going to be 4 years from now. It's going to be so much more advanced, right? And in 4 years, when whatever attack happens or whatever, you know, cybersecurity risk emerges, even if you're going to have some type of, okay, let's look at this after the fact, like it's going to be to a point 4 years from now where it's going to be constant. So any after action report or lessons learned, not a lot of time is going to be spent on that because you're going to be on to the next thing, right? So like it's going to be, yeah, we had a chance to prevent this right now, you know what I mean? But 4 years from now, it's just going to be so far into the future, you know what I mean? I mean, there's it's not classified or anything like that, but there's reports out there that like we are going to be going at it with China like very hard, like 4 years from now, you know what I mean? Like we have had military leaders come out and say this. I want to say it was the SecDef came out and was like, yeah, China is going to be a real threat. I think it was 2027, I think was the date, the year he gave. But like we're going to be deep into it, you know.
Yeah, we talked about it last week, or they had a foothold in Guam already,
Yeah.
right? Like they're already preparing for the Pacific to be in contention.
They're out there buzzing planes right now, you know. This just
that was an article the other day. I was like, ooh.
yeah. So I mean, it's happening, man. Like it is getting real. And like this goes kind of like into the whole, I know it's a little bit different, but like you want to bake in the security early on for these things. We can't afford to be attaching it later on when something happens, you know what I mean? Or worrying about it later on when something happens.
Right. And the government kind of leads the way. So like I work in the private sector. So after retiring from the military, now I'm over in the civilian sector. And companies really have to weigh those risks, right? Like risk management is huge on that side because again, cybersecurity is not profitable unless that's your business, right? If that's not your business and it's something you have to add on because of regulation, you see that as either zero sum or you're losing money. So you don't pursue it as heavily unless you are the victim of a breach and so on and so forth, right? Like you're reeling from an attack, so now you need to plug that hole so that way you don't lose public trust or you don't lose revenue because people don't want to work with you. So the government has been really pushing GLBA. They're pushing the new FISMA stuff. Like they're pushing hard. But is some of that steam gonna or pressure going to be relaxed because the government themselves are not doing right? Like how can you tell somebody like you need to be hardcore set on cybersecurity, but we're kind of lax on this side. And again, the government outspends the rest of the world, right? Like, so there's still money there. So I'm not saying that they cut it to nothing, like people, it's not mass layoffs like the private sector and things of that nature. It's just what could have been with these millions of dollars as opposed to, you know, the other side of it where they're like, hey, it is allocated, let's take the money back. So it's not that bad. So I'd say that's not the worst story. It's just not as impactful and joyous as we were at the beginning of the year when we saw these executive orders drop in and like they were putting more money in the coffers. So
but the cost to keep up is getting more and more expensive. Like I'm seeing this now, like when it comes to us renewing, you know, different maintenance contracts and things like that with my job, I'm just like, man, I remember this stuff was nowhere near this price.
yeah, it's very
true. I mean, like
yeah.
The cost to keep up is getting more. So like, even if, and I get it, you're right. It's not that we're bringing it back down to zero. We're not doing that. It's not like we took it all or whatever. But again, as the years go on, you know, what may have been costing you $100,000 a year to maintain, you know, next year is 150, and then it's two. But that's just one system, right? That's gone up 50%. When you got to do it across everything you need to protect for, you know, CISA, any type of DoD entities or wherever, right? Like that multiplies.
That's very true.
Yeah, and I think this is something I think is true. And with this article, what it shows is if you want to know someone's real priorities, where are they putting their money? Where are they spending their money? Right. And basically the government saying, not here.
No, that's very true. And that's that's good to end on, right? Like, so we'll see what the future looks like. Hit us up at all of the social medias to go by our name. And you can find Mike Ware at
Mike Ware 45 at Twitter and Michael Ware, I think 1 on LinkedIn.
There it is. Stay safe, stay secure.